Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really appreciate your enthusiasm and the comments you make about the importance of teaching and science. You're right. I taught kitchen chemistry, and all I did was tell the youngsters that they understand what they're doing. We just put a different terminology on it, and so there are ways to make science interesting. But I'll make one clarification. It is easy and fun to teach youngsters from different language groups science, but they have to have comprehensible input. And so we need to use the language they understand best in order for them to formulate the concepts. And then from there, when they learn English better, they can speak about it in another language. So, but science is one of the best and most interesting way of engaging a youngster in learning. And I think that you're right. Science is really basic in terms of understanding the world around us and appreciating both differences and similarities. And I'm just fascinated with all the new information that come out that tell us we're closer to each other, including the other primates, if we look at our DNA. And so there must be something out there that try to tell us that we're all connected somehow. The enthusiasm is what I really want to hang on to, and the experience about giving teachers support is critical. And I think that while we talk about supporting teachers and making sure that they're well informed and well trained, we need to remember that youngsters are the primary reason that we're there. That children are they're the goal, and they're the reason that we're there as far as the educational system. And that if we understand that youngsters only come to school with one currency, that's time, that maybe we'll be a little bit more serious about as a society to make sure that the youngsters, that we as adults don't waste their time, because we can't take their time and bank it and then withdraw it later. And so we need to be prepared both intellectually, content, and also in approaching the youngsters in how they come to us. If it's language we need to use as an instructional tool for conceptual development, then that's what we need to do. And so I would urge us to look at, as we struggle with the policies of science, that we remember the child is the purpose that we're there. And no parent, regardless of what background they come from, will ever condemn us for looking at youngsters in that way. I think you bring a lot of interest and smiles and things like that to science and to education. But I think that, in that skill, in that ability, and that opportunity that you have, that we also, remind ourselves about the child, including the instruction, but the child and all the different ways the child comes to us, and challenge ourselves to not only look at teacher instruction, but infrastructure, the classrooms and how we assess them, and that assessment is the end product. Curriculum is the treatment. So if we're assessing the child's achievement, if they don't achieve well, then we should be saying we failed, not the child failed. That the kinds of treatment that we provided that child or the assessment missed the boat. So with your vast exposure, the question I'd like to ask both of you is, in the realm of public education, where does equity fit in terms of providing the kind of education we want for all our children? on where are we on the debate of equity, and where does that fit in terms of policy making?
By equity, you mean from school district to school district, or do you mean people from different backgrounds?
It probably is all of that, huh?
Well, I'd say this is where good national standards would help everybody. If we had good national standards that were not too burdensome, then this is a case where people at the local level can evaluate the kids who are coming to their school and address their needs individually and still meet and still have success at getting them excited about science, getting them to embrace science as an important part of their lives. So if I understand your question, it's empowering officials and teachers locally with guidance and, if I may, funding provided federally. And so this balance between local authority and national authority is what I think we need to work on, and where I think No Child Left Behind had some trouble, was requirements without the authority or the ability or the resources to meet those requirements.
You almost answered the question, but let me phrase it in my way and refer to your kind of description. Number one, I think we have to have equal expectations, and that's where Bill's absolutely correct. The standards and assessment across this country, in the name of federal legislation, are not equal. They are too diverse. I mean, all you need to do is read the reports that 6% success in one district is a 94% success or a state in another state. So that's not equity to begin with. But assuming we have that, and I think we can achieve that if we just have the political will to do it, then we have to think about the students themselves. And I think we have to be very careful of how we think and define equity. And we must think of equity not just as input, or to use your word, treatment. And we have to think about equity of achievement or equity of output. And that means when the output is not what we would say is equal across all groups of students, then we have to upgrade, increase, improve, and I'll use your terminology, the treatment, the instruction, the support, the time spent with those students. That's what we have to think about. So part of our problem is simply the inability to carefully, and I think equitably, if you will, define equity, not as input, but as what students achieve, or to put it in almost engineering terms, the output.
To the chair, if I may, the last comment or question. What if we assess each child at the age of 3 through whatever assessments we have at hand and funded each child accordingly? Would that be equity?
Wow.
I think it's rhetorical. No. I mean, it doesn't sound like it.
What
no, that's like, if I understand, it's analogous to one vote per person. You're saying you want to give them a gain?
No, that's parity.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
I'm saying if you assess each child and each child's different, therefore each child needs different kinds of attention and resources, then there would be different amounts of money and efforts behind each child. And if that's the case, then are we meeting that child's, at least developing a roadmap for the child that's pertinent to that one child? If we go through each child, then would that be considered equity?
I'd have to give that some thought.
Okay, that's
but
all.
This I can tell you. The so-called individual lesson plan, the ILP, has become a real burden for many teachers because there's an effect that may not have been anticipated, where one student has an individualized lesson plan, his or her parents find out about it, his or her parents of another student find out about it, and they want an individualized lesson plan for for his or her student, and then it becomes a burden. So this is where, once again, I'm not sure I'm addressing your question directly, but I'll give us something to think about. Once again, we need standards that are usable for a very large number of students so that it is equitable.
So it's burdensome for us to
Right now,
no, it's burdensome for us to understand that each child has different kinds of needs, and developing an individual plan for each child is not necessary, or it doesn't go towards equity because it's burdensome on the system. Now, are we worried more about the system and the infrastructure and the cost of it, or are we worried about figuring out what the child needs? It challenges us to, as a policymaker, to step outside the box, and rather than being confined within the current structure. And I understand the current structure is that we end up having parents and school boards fighting for the best interest of the child and spending a lot of money. That's burdensome. And yet the time of the child moves on and on and on. We know good and well through the assessment what that child really needs, but we can't afford it. Now I'm asking the question, should we be challenging ourselves as a society to find ways to make that affordable?
well, here's the thing. Think about your favorite teachers. They were passionate. And I claim that very good teachers had a feel or an intuition, or perhaps it was cognitive. They thought about it and made notes, where they provided each child with an individual lesson plan, where they do teach each child individually. Each child, they engage each child and they give that kid what he or she needs. What's happened right now, and I think we have an opportunity to make things better, is that intuition now has to be documented, has to be spelled out, and records have to be kept. And that's costing the teacher the most precious thing he or she has, his or her time. And so that, I think, as I understand it, these are anecdotes from people I've spoken with over the last, let's call it 12 years. This is something we could improve.
Thank you, Mr. Honda. Thank you very much.